Hello again. I dare say that some viewers have seen that in San Francisco, a panel appointed by the city has come up with what seems to them to be a just and equitable way of compensating black people living there for the experience of slavery of their distant ancestors. This would entail giving $5 million to every black person, cancelling any debts they owe, selling them houses for $1 each, and guaranteeing all black people an annual salary of $97,000 a year for the next couple of centuries. I promise that I'm not making this up. I give a link in the description to this video to a report on the matter from the BBC. Still, viewers in Britain can breathe a sigh of relief. None of this is going to affect them, is it? As a matter of fact, we are facing a situation which is in some ways even more extravagantly greedy. The heads of state of all the Caribbean nations got together a few years ago and decided to put the bite on Britain by establishing a body called the Caribbean Reparations Committee. This is frankly a confidence trick, which uses lies and trickery in order to try and extract enormous sums of money from Britain. Money which would of course be paid from our taxes. This is a swindle. Strong words indeed, and I dare say that viewers might be asking themselves how I can be sure that this is a dishonest racket rather than merely an ill-conceived campaign run by honest and perhaps misinformed people. In the description to this video I give a link to the 10-point plan for compensation to which the nations of the Caribbean claim that they are entitled. It begins as follows. In 2013, Caribbean heads of government established the CARICOM Reparations Commission with a mandate to prepare the case for reparatory justice for the region's indigenous and African descendant communities who are victims of crimes against humanity in the forms of genocide, slavery, slave trading and racial apartheid. I hope that this is clear. This is concerned only with people in the Caribbean. Scroll down a little and you will see a black and white photograph of a little boy with a large piece of wood balanced on his head attached to a chain around his ankle. A very sad picture by any standards. What though does this have to do with the Caribbean? As it happens, I'm familiar with this photograph because I came across it when researching the book of mine which has just been published about the slave trade in Africa. In the description to this video I give a link to the original of this photograph, which was taken in 1896 by the Reverend Walter K. Firminger, who was a missionary in Zanzibar, the island which is now part of the East African nation of Tanzania. It shows a slave in Zanzibar, which was absolutely nothing whatever to do with the transatlantic slave trade. That child was never within 1,000,000 miles of the Caribbean. The use of that picture on information from the Caribbean Reparations Commission is a deliberate piece of deception, and they hope that nobody will notice what they have done. I've noticed, though. Under the heading of reparation, we read that over 10 million Africans were stolen from their homes and forcefully transported to the Caribbean as the enslaved chattel and property of Europeans. First, of course, it was not Europeans who stole those Africans from their homes. That was done by other Africans. Secondly, the figure of 10 million is roughly twice as high as the generally accepted number of people transported to the Caribbean from Africa. I give a link which provides a usually quoted figure, which is 5 million. Scroll down now to the paragraph headed 5, Public Health Crisis. It seems that it is Europe's responsibility to deal with the health problems in the Caribbean. This is because, and I quote, the African descended population in the Caribbean has the highest incidence in the world of chronic diseases in the forms of hypertension and type 2 diabetes. This pandemic is a direct result of the nutritional experience, physical and emotional brutality, and overall stress profiles associated with slavery, genocide, and apartheid. At risk of being pedantic, this is not a pandemic at all. A pandemic is a widespread epidemic of an infectious disease. The high blood pressure and diabetes, which is horribly widespread in the Caribbean, and for that matter among African Americans and people in Britain of Caribbean heritage, has nothing to do with infectious disease at all. It's entirely lifestyle. It is so perfectly true that levels of high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes are higher in the Caribbean than anywhere else in the world. But why do you think that is? Is it really the direct result of the nutritional experience, physical and emotional brutality, and overall stress profiles associated with slavery, genocide, and apartheid? Of course it isn't. And what's more, the governments of the Caribbean do not believe this themselves, not for a moment. This really is a try-on. Also in the description to this video, I give a link to a piece published by the Caribbean Public Health Agency, which tells us that obesity levels in Caribbean countries are the highest compared to the rest of the world, and alarmingly high in our children. Gosh, that's right. And what is it that causes high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes? Why, that would be obesity, of course. It is, as I said, the same story in Britain and America. Black people tend to be more overweight than white people, and as a result, they are more prone to diabetes and high blood pressure. It is nothing to do at all to do with stress profiles associated with slavery and genocide, but rather a direct consequence of too much fried chicken and too many takeaways and not enough cooking of healthy meals. I do not have the time, and I suspect the viewers may not have the patience, to go point by point through the rest of the 10-point reparations plan. But I have, I think, said enough to show viewers that this is a document which is riddled with deliberate falsehood and misrepresentation. It is a scam, and that's the best that can be said of the whole enterprise.